anyway, so we're going to get straight into it. So that seems to be working perfectly. Well, that's been a very good class today, and really appreciate you joining today. Roger, have you got any questions?
Not at the moment, Carl, no.
No, we just finished the class. We're just going to, that's it. Okay.
Well, thanks very much, Carl. See you.
Hang on, you weren't supposed to be with us this week, so what are you doing there?
I've told you about 3 times I'll be back tonight from holiday.
Why weren't you there? Rog, shut up. I'm talking now. Why weren't you there yesterday?
Club night. Keyboard club night.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. That's right. Right, we've had a lot of interferences the past few weeks with the reception, and this is obviously working. I'm not going to tell you what I've done right, but and also. Do you know what? Right. Do you know what? Right. I despair. Right. I have abuse off Roger, and I think he's a right twonk. Right. I have abuse off Richard. Right. Why don't I have abuse off Peter, and we'll make it a full set?
Me abuse you?
No.
Okay. Hey, Pete. I've not asked you for money today, so I'm going to do it now. Right. We're going to be renewing these classes after next week. So we're just we've had a few problems this month. It's not been the best of months for teaching these classes, but I want to continue the idea and the concept that we're doing. It's allowing our minds to expand, which is where we are. And today we're going to be looking at cup and ring marks, and we're just going to try and appreciate just this phenomenon, cup and ring marks. What are cup and ring marks? Now, we some of us have seen them, some of us know what they are, but I think one of the problems that we've got in regards to prehistory is that we don't have the voices and people directly from prehistory giving us interpretations of what's out there. Right. So what I mean by that, if we take the whole idea of Tim Ingold, and we take the idea of the line, and we take the idea of that a progression, that moment from A to B, we've got to think about monuments in the past, and we've got to say some strange things like, did Silbury Hill mean anything to people in the past? And you guys are going to say definitely it must have, right? But did it? That's a strange thing for me to say, isn't it? So let's think about Stonehenge. Did it actually mean something to people in the past? And you're going to say, of course it did. But what did it mean to people in the past? Their concept of meanings and their sort of interpretations and their belief is very, very different from our concepts and understanding and where we're at. For example, Bill knows that I've got a deep love for my turkey Baldric, and I give him cuddles. And he giggles when I give him a good old snood twiddle, and I gather in his wattles underneath, and I put it up against my cheek. Right, what is my turkey thinking? Right,
what are you thinking now?
Yeah. Takes all types of boy.
But that is a good metaphor for where we are. That is a really good metaphor for where we are, because you know, my turkey and me, this is in the present moment, right? But Baldric actually has started to be a guard turkey as well. If anyone turns up on the property, Baldric is there following them, and he follows them out to make sure that they don't do anything strange, right? Now, or is he, or isn't he doing that? This is the thing. That's my interpretation. He's following them. Why is he following them? Is it because he's a guard turkey? What does that mean? So this is the problem. We've got interpretations now, and then trying to interpret what people are looking at in the past is a very different phenomenon. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try a new bit of technology that I've been using on Tuesday nights. It's sometimes worked on Tuesday nights. I've got it's not a PowerPoint projection, but it's similar. So I'm just gonna. The reception is perfect now, and if I ruin this, right, who haven't I brought? It's Richard's fault. That's it. I can't bring Bill because Bill's never wrong. Isn't that right, Bill? Yeah, that's true. Oh, by the way, Bill, right?
Yes.
By the way, do you know when you get things wrong in life?
Yes, which we do. We
And
all do.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do, Pete was with me today. Me and Pete shared a moment, right?
Oh.
And basically, you know, this tower in Barry, this Second World War tower.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there's Baldrick. Look at him.
Oh, good.
Doesn't he look gorgeous, Bill?
He does look very pretty. Yes, very colourful.
He does.
I bet he attracts the ladies.
Oh, he definitely attracts me. We're very close, me and Baldrick. Right, what we're gonna do? We're gonna go off there, and we're gonna where are we? Right. I'm gonna. But do I go that way? No, I gotta go that way. Ask me somebody if I know what I'm doing, because which way have I got to go with this, Richard? Oh, there. Right. Bill.
Yep.
This is the Second World War watchtower, right?
Yep. Right.
Do you know when I said it was 4 meters on the ground plan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It turned out to be under 2 meters, right? And it's not 8 meters tall. It's 6 meters 75 centimeters, right? So there I was telling people we need this thing, and dimensions are completely different. So it looks like we are able to take it down now, Bill, because the possibilities are all there now, so we can save it.
Carl, the first thing you need to do is get a structural survey on it to make sure it's safe to take down. That's the very first thing.
This is why we've got Bill. You've heard of Pritchard's, the civil engineering company.
Well, as long as you've got someone, yeah, that's fine.
Yes, I'll be speaking to him tomorrow, so that's fine. Right, Bill. What we're going to do now? I just wanted to show Bill that because Bill's in my inner circle, right? What we are going to do now is, are you seeing this on the screen?
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
Roger, right. Can I just make a comment, Roger, right? I know you've been away a few weeks, right? But shut up. I don't want to hear you.
Well, you're asking what was on the screen. I thought I'd tell you to help you, Carl. I don't want to rush you,
No, I was already in discussion with somebody else. I don't really want to know your opinion, okay? Anyway, sure, thanks, Roger. It's okay. Just don't get too excited, okay? Thank you. Anyway, what was I going to? Is you've interfered with me too much today, Roger. I don't know what I'm talking about now. Mind you, you guys have been saying that for years. Shut up. Stephen's not joining us today because he's out in Cardiff. Right. So you've all seen these before, cup and ring marks. Oh God, there, good. You've all seen cup and ring marks, yeah?
Yeah.
No, not really. No.
You've never seen these before, Roger?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You hang on a minute, right. Everyone, shut up a minute. Roger, you've been to my classes in Cardiff, right? And we've never covered cup and ring marks.
We might have, but I can't remember them. That's what you said.
Oh, right. Okay, Roger. Just any excuse. Just any excuse to get back to it. Right. Now, last week, what we tried to do, we did it. We sort of did it from the week before, right? There was poor old Richard that doesn't have a clue what's going on when I'm doing these lectures anymore, and there was Stephen, right? And what we looked at was the idea of the maze and the labyrinth. Yeah. So, Roger, if I asked you what a labyrinth was and a maze, would you know the difference?
Yes.
Yeah, what is the difference then?
A labyrinth is a sort of probably underground series of spaces, if you like. A maze is usually built of a hedge, which you can get lost.
Roger, you're just making it up now, aren't you? But basically, you are right, Roger, with everything you've just said, but that's not exactly the reason. A labyrinth, yeah, has a beginning and an end, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
So basically, you go along one. Now, the labyrinths are fascinating because labyrinths are technically a straight line, but in a curved circle, or a labyrinth can actually be in a straight line, right? That's what a labyrinth is. A labyrinth has a beginning and an end, right? And when you're looking at things like this, you're looking at some of these cup and ring marks have got concentric circles. Others have got these little lines into them. Now, we've got to be very sensible with the image that we're looking at. We've got a few other images of cup and ring marks to look at. And then we look at the idea of the maze, right? Richard, what is a maze? Tell us. Richard's not even there now. I don't think he cares.
But a maze has got an end to it, somewhere to actually get to. It's got a goal.
Yeah, but that's a labyrinth. Right, anyway. Yeah, well, actually, Richard's right as well. Basically, with a maze, right, you can go in a maze, and if you go on the left and you're supposed to go on the right, then you can go into dead ends, right? With a labyrinth, it just keeps going. So, yeah, Richard's right. A maze has a beginning and an end, right? A labyrinth has a beginning and an end, but the difference between a labyrinth and a maze is that you can go in different directions with a maze, but with a labyrinth, we're just going in one direction, right? So now, when we've been looking at these cup and ring marks, they are extremely intriguing. Now, there's one part of Britain that has thousands of these cup and ring marks. It's in Kilmartin, right? And Kilmartin is in Argyll in Scotland, which is in south west Scotland, right? And there's loads of them, right? And there's loads of cups and there's loads of ring marks, right? But one thing that we will say about cup and ring marks is they're not just indigenous to Britain. In fact, cup and ring marks can be found in places like Switzerland, Italy, Germany. In fact, the idea of this circle, this concentric circle idea, right, is a worldwide phenomenon. In many of the classes that we've actually looked at, we've come across cup and ring marks or similar things, and you can get an idea of the scale. That there is a compass, a normal everyday compass that you have around your neck. So these are actually quite big. These are actually really, really big cup and ring marks. Now, I'm not going into detail, but recently I've actually found a load of cup and ring marks on a big boulder, right? Which I now own, and which I haven't published or anything yet. But I was moving some stuff, and there was this huge boulder, and there was some cup and ring marks on it, and I thought, right, I'm having that, so I'm taking it for safe keeping, and Bill and everyone else will be able to see that object very soon. Well, in about a year's time. But anyway, it was great seeing this because there were actually clearly cup and ring marks on it, and it was like a boulder that was dumped along the side of the road. And I just thought, right, this is going to be destroyed sometime. So I decided to chuck it in the back of the van and bring it back. But anyway, most of these cup and ring marks are actually fixed in stone on the ground, right? They're solid. They're there. And it's amazing that after thousands of years, they're still there. Now, the big question is, when do cup and ring marks date from? Now, this is a really interesting point. The idea of the idea of the ring, the idea of the circle, the idea of an indentation on the rock is thousands of years old. And the idea of producing a spiral is thousands of years old. The idea of producing concentric circles is an idea that's thousands of years old. We seem to love to create circles within circles, circles within circles, spirals within spirals. La 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 la. Sorry.
La 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 la.
La 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 la. But anyway, Harry Nielsen won it. Anyway, I've lost the flow now. Anyway, so these cup and ring marks, it's very odd that they have been there on the rock for not 1,000 years. Try 2,000 years, not 2,000 years. Try 3,000 years. Try 5,000. 6,000 years some of these have been in the rock, or even longer, right? And it does make you wonder. They've been outside. Now this is like a Kilmartin example, yeah. The ones at Kilmartin are on flat bits of rock, right? And lots of them are covered with moss and stuff these days, and when you kick a bit of moss, right, it's like going for molehill looking, isn't it? Looking for pottery in a molehill. You kick a molehill and you find pottery. Well, up in places like Kilmartin and big tracts of Scotland, you kick a bit of moss away and you get these cup and ring marks, right? But so they date to over 6,000 years old, and it's quite amazing for me knowing what I do about erosion, it's quite amazing that these things are actually still with us today. Absolutely amazing, right? Amazing it is. So what we need to do is those ones in the middle are cut marks, right? And these rings around the outside, those are the rings. So they're usually called cup and ring marks, but you sometimes get just rings, and sometimes you just get cups. Now up in Maddie, up in the Rhondda Valley, there's I was up there with good old Martin, and when I was up with good old Martin, he said, look at this stone, right? And there was a cup mark in it, right? Anyway, I took a load of photographs, took it back, and then we did an article of this in the newsletter. Actually, they were like there was like a big Z carved on it. If you remember that, it was like in the newsletter for ages ago, right? Anyway, so that was amazing, and it was just this like thing out in the outside, and it was there for all to see. And great. So you do find these things from time to time. And also, I don't know if any, Bill, can you remember when you went to York? I don't know when the York trip was, to be honest with you, but when you were, when you went to the York trip, Bill, did you actually go into the Yorkshire Museum grounds and there was a big stone there and there was actually like a big cut mark in it? You remember seeing that?
If you say we went and you showed us, Carl, yes.
Well done, Bill. I'm glad you remember it. Anyway, there's this massive boulder there in outside the Yorkshire Museum, and it's got like a cut mark in it, right? And that is the oldest artifact in York, and that dates back to 6,000 years ago. This massive boulder, huge boulder is, and you're thinking, well, how the hell has that survived? But it has. And there's this connection with these cup and ring marks. Now, can I just bring in a concept? When you got the idea of the line, the continuous line, right? And you could talk about the continuous knotwork, right? And continuous braiding and all that sort of idea. Continue, the sense of continuous line, the continuous line, right? Which is the ever
never ending.
Shut up. Which is the never. I was just about to say that. Like, the never-ending line of life. However, Pete,
Yeah.
now let's just calm down a minute, right? That is our interpretation.
Mhm.
Right? Now, you and I have done that interpretation, the never-ending wheel or circle or line of life, right? That's our interpretation. Right. So whenever you look at things like this, we've got to go on to another image now in a minute, guys. Right. That when you look at an image like this, you think, right, that means the never-ending wheel of life, or that means like entering the circle and repetition, or the start and the beginning of something, right? But some people have actually started to say, hang on a minute, because Pete and I have been so obsessed with this never-ending circle of life, we might have actually missed what these were actually for. Now, we've got to move on.
Carl,
yeah, go
on this bottom right one, it looks like there's a line cutting up from the outside straight to the centre.
Mhm.
Yes.
Is that? Don't see it on the other one.
Actually, Roger, interesting enough, if you look at that one, because the red lines are on, you do see it, but you don't see it on that one, Roger. You were right. And that one there, it looks like a little bit of a tadpole. Now, this idea, this idea of this line going in the middle, some people have actually started to interpret this as meaning something completely different. These actually might be maps, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to move the image a minute, right? Let's just move that one, right? Have any of you ever heard about the legend of Ragnarok? It's like that old sort of Scandinavian legend of Ragnarok, where there's this beast at the end of the world and it's going to end everything. You ever heard of that one?
No.
Oh God, maybe we should do another lecture on Ragnarok. But anyway, Ragnarok itself is this Scandinavian deity. He's like this sort of end of the world sort of prophecy, right? And the way you go to Ragnarok is you if you look at the artwork on some of these Viking ships, right, you see these endless lines, sort of this scroll work going everywhere, right? And some of it might lead to a beast or a dragon or a great serpent. That is the story of Ragnarok, right? And when you think about it, you think, right, oh, right, okay, what's going on here? It's a journey. So from a moment, we looked at the never-ending circle of life. Then I've moved a little bit further and said it's a journey. Which could actually, are you still looking at this image?
No.
Us.
Oh, right, okay. Well, okay, we'll just get that back on again. My finger slipped. It was almost as if, yeah, my finger slipped. Anyway, Roger, have you ever had the experience where your fingers have slipped and you've got a beautiful woman there? Never mind.
Oh,
Anyway, yeah, sure. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that you've got this never-ending circle of life, right? That's one interpretation. The line, which is that academic Ingold idea that everything goes in lines and everything's sort of a progression and everything linked, right? So that's another way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is a story. You know, it's a story. The other way of looking at it is a map. Right. The other way of looking at it is a journey. So what we've done, we've expanded our knowledge straight away. Now, this itself is actually a rock in Italy. So going from that, which is in Scotland, to a rock in Italy. Now, interesting enough, this is in Italy itself, because this next one here is in Sardinia. And what can you see? You can see exactly that observation that Roger made. This little line going into the middle. It can't be just coincidental because it's the same thing. So if you look at that, that's in Sardinia. Sardinia, Italy, big island off Italy, right? So if we go back again, it's exactly the same thing. Now, what is going on? What is this meant to mean? Right? Now, what we've got to do now, if we go back again, right, and that's actually the same as well. That's it's the same type of thing. What we need to do, we need to think about. Stop it! Oh, hang on a minute. Let's just go back again. Oh, there we go. One thing I always say in archaeology is that things are determined, right? There's this idea of determinism. In other words, what's going to happen is that human beings in certain parts of the world will start walking with no other connection with other human beings. Human beings in certain parts of the world at some time in the past started talking, very similar to other human beings in different parts of the world talking. Human beings making boats in certain parts of the world and somewhere else they're making certain parts of the world. So in other words, what we're talking about is determinism, right? Determinism. But the problem is determinism relies upon the idea that the same idea is going to spring in different areas at different times, but with no link between the different communities, right? So this puts us in a bit of a problem, right? And what we're going to do, we're going to mention the C word that Pete is obsessed with, right? In other words, the word Celtic. Celtic art, not Celtic civilization, which is one differentiation that I make. However, Pete can say, right, the Celts, 2,500 years ago, right? And you've got this same idea. Okay, we'll leave that there with Pete. However, the people creating these existed thousands and thousands of years before movements of anybody in any level of scale, right? So one of the things that we can think about, and one of the things that we can sort of gesticulate over, is that why are they producing the same things in different parts of the world? Was there any link? Was there any connection between these worlds 6,000 years ago? Right. In fact, we actually was there any link between Sardinia and mainland Italy? Was there any link between Italy and the similar type of stuff in Switzerland? Was there any link between this kind of art and Central America? Oh, no. So this must have meant something for the human psyche. We're creating these things. Again, This is exactly the same art as we see in Britain, but we see it on Sardinia.
Oh, can I ask a question here?
Go for it. I need a break.
Though you've got a number of the circle marks, cup marks there, okay? Has it been established whether they are all contemporary or not, or actually carved in at different times?
Bill, you've asked the question. You've asked the question. I have the questions now and again. I had an absolute corker last night as well. The questions now, as you know, Bill, right? In British archaeology, we have chronologies. We have Mesolithic, we have Neolithic, we have Copper Age, which I've just chucked in there over recent years, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman, early medieval, and all the rest of it, right? So that's fine. We got a chronology, and we can like fit things in. But the biggest problem is with this idea of the circle and the continuous line to create these concentric circles is that we don't have. Well, they're not being created at the same time. Bill, what is the same time for you? Events going on in Australia as events going on in Russia, as events going on in Britain, all at the same time at this date, which is the 23rd of March 2022. That's happening at the same time. The Neolithic period is a massively long period.
Yeah.
So the point is, Bill, right? If somebody said, right, somebody's creating this type of monument 6,000 years ago in Argyll in Scotland. Let's be really precise. 6,000 years ago on the 14th of August at 12:15. We're doing really precise there. I know that sounds silly. Fine. Then you get ones being produced on Anglesey, which is, let's put another date in there. We're making these dates as we go along. 5,900 years ago, right? Now, to an archaeologist, that's contemporary. But it's not, because there's 100 years difference between these carvings. But it all happens at the beginning of the Neolithic period. But that to me is not contemporary. It is not contemporary. So, Bill, when you start talking about the word contemporary, it's a very difficult and charred, distorted word, which it's trying to go on, Pete.
We're all fascinated by the ripples of a pond when a pebble is dropped in, and that would be the same all over the world. And no matter where you were, if you saw the pebbles, the waves from a pebble in a pond, that would maybe attract you, and that may well be the source of these in different parts of the world. People seeing the same thing and being attracted by the same thing.
Actually, Peter, you've just exploded, right? And the reason why you've exploded is because that one is underneath. The one on the left is underneath that one. Okay, that's been created underneath that one, right? It goes into that one, which would give you the idea of the ripple. That is a very useful point. Now, we did actually have this discussion before where we did discuss this as a ripple, right? But then it comes in with the idea is, how does the line come into this? And then we've got the other, back to what Bill said. Bill said, are these all contemporary, right? Now, an idea can be an idea in one location and can be an idea in another location, but they mean two different things, right? So, okay, for example, right? Okay, how do I express this properly? How do I express? Oh God, I'm just trying to think of something. Right, okay then. Right, this is a bad example, right? We use tomato ketchup in this country to put on chips. In America, they put it into soups and sauces, right? Don't tell me that's wrong or right, because I'm not really interested, right? So what it is, the actual ingredient is the sauce in the ketchup bottle, right? But in one location, they use it to put on your chips, and in another location, they put it in soups, right? And I know that because I do know chefs, and they yeah, because this is what they use sauce for. It's tomato, isn't it? Don't tell me that whether that's right. So the meat, right, might mean something to one person but might have a completely different meaning to somebody else. And Bill, this could all be at the same time, right? This could all be contemporary, right? So, and Peter's just mentioned this thing about bees being ripples, right? Well, okay, it might be ripples to the Sardinians, but that might actually be a map to somebody in Argyll. But there is a similarity, as Roger pointed out. There's that little line there. We're doing lines. We've been doing lines for the past few months, right? There's a line there. The idea of the line. What is the line doing there, right? And you know what I think, right? I'm actually a good tosser, right? You've a stone tosser, right? Not a tosser, but I toss stones, right? So but basically, right, I can get my stone to bounce on the water. I've had 18 times occasionally, 18 times, right? And eventually, Pete, if it lands in the water and it probably creates a ripple, right? So I'm an extremely good tosser. I can toss my stone in there, go ding, 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 or I can toss my stone and it goes in the water, right? Now, is it too much, Pete, for me to interpret that there as a line of somebody chucking a pebble in the water?
Possible.
Right. Now, but to somebody else, that may actually be a walkway into a settlement.
Yep.
Yeah, but now we're getting it. Bingo. It's Bill said to me ages ago, right? This is come to haunt Bill, right? He said he gave me a Christmas card or a card of some kind once, and he said archaeologists lie and lie again, or something like that, right? However, what we've got to think here of is what we got to think here is that actually, when they're creating these things in the past, they don't all have the same meaning. Archaeologists say that they have the same meaning, but they don't. They don't have all the same meaning, right? Nothing in life is that easy. Okay, say for example, right? Say for example, I go up to a woman and say, how are you, love? And she says, yeah, I'm fine, right? Another woman, as I did on an acting set one day, reported me to the director and I was nearly walked off set for calling her love, right? Or another woman might think love as in affectionate love, right? It's the same word, isn't it? It's the same challenge, it's the same statement, but they have three different meanings. And they're all said at the same time. I've got three women standing in front of me and I've said the same thing. One has nearly lost me my job. The other one is in love with me. And the other one has just thought, well, that's what he does. That's what he says. Yeah. And then the power back is off the two of them. One of them says, love to me. And the other one, as she goes, says love. But the other one's nearly lost me my job. So the point is, the biggest point with all this is not to go overboard with interpretation. Be realistic with interpretation, and maybe and there's something else here to get really more complicated, right? Okay, Pete, you've been right. Basically, 6,000 years ago, that circle there and that circle there meant somebody chucking a stone in the water to indicate the ripple, right? Okay, Pete. Just for the sake of argument, that one there is created 300 years later, but there's a different meaning for that one. So, Pete, give me an interpretation for that one, just off the top of your head. Go on.
Well, it was probably used by a much bigger stone, and so there were less ripples, or maybe a smaller stone and less ripples. And it's just the fact that the ripples would fascinate someone in one part of the world, but the same ripples would fascinate somebody entirely different part of the world. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Oh my God, you've even got it a bit further. So what? So right, okay, Pete. I want you to get right. Okay, you've taken another level. This is even deeper, right? So you go, yeah. I actually meant something else when I asked you that question, Pete. Right? I actually meant give it a completely different interpretation. But what you've done is that somebody else is coming along 200-300 years later, and there's a different interpretation, but it's still about ripples, right? Now I find that equally more fascinating. Okay, Pete, right? Oh God, right. This is 5,000 years ago. Move away from the ripples, but you're looking at this 1,000 years on after they've been created. Give your interpretation. It has nothing to do with ripples.
Well, it could be the entrance to it as like a settlement, as you say, where they had they've dug a circular ditch and to protect the actual environment of the settlement. And so the line through it is the pathway into the center.
Well, that's actually quite appropriate. And the reason why that's quite appropriate, Pete, is that in the Neolithic period, we've sometime around similar to the dates on these stones. We've got something called causewayed enclosures, right? And what causewayed enclosures are is basically you've got I call them the string of sausages. So you've got a concentric circle, but there's breaks. So you've got a ditch, you've got a break, a causeway, ditch, causeway, blah blah blah, right? And then what you then have is more people moving into the community. You have more ditches, another concentric circle, and if you look at Windmill Hill, you've got several more concentric circles, right? Eventually, what they then did was join the ditches all together, and the actual meaning of the causewayed enclosure completely changed to something else, right? So I think the challenge in the past is not to see everything as one moment. This is why I keep mentioning this analyst, Tim Ingle, this archaeological analyst. I just keep mentioning him because this is what he's talking about. This is exactly what he's talking about. There's always a progression, there's a development in what archaeology is all about, what we're seeing all around us, right? I'm just going to be careful on the time. Right, okay, we got 20 minutes, so let's keep going. Now this itself, this is rather interesting. I haven't got a photograph of this stone. Well, I do, but I want to keep it as a surprise. When I found this stone with all these cut marks and sort of things on it, right, there was something like this on it, and that's how I knew I'd found something. Right, now this is actually from hang on. Is this one from Northumberland? I think, or is from Argyll? I'm a bit confused. Yeah, it's up in the north, right? This stone itself is actually a replica, right? It's in that Neolithic genre, right? Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be really unfair with Pete. Pete, interpret that into your ripple theory.
Oh, that would be very difficult because it's
why would it be
not
very
concentric?
Difficult?
But is that proud or is it a depth?
Inverted.
Are those dots? Are they dips?
It's inverted. It's not in
bumps.
relief. It's actually in. It's not bumps. It's actually in the rock. It's inverted. Yeah. It's carved into the rock.
Yeah.
Right.
So that could be a pathway to somewhere.
So you're going with a pathway now. Give me another. Actually, move away from the Move away from the idea of concentric circles. Move away from the idea of the pathway. What else could that mean?
I'm not sure. I can't put. I wouldn't like to try and put a name to it.
Anyone else got any ideas on that other than what we've discussed?
Could be a map, as Pete touched on, couldn't it? With pathways to different settlements.
Now, if we. What we've just done overnight, we've actually made things a lot more simple, right? And the concentric circle thing was something that we have talked about. We talked about that at Karnak. We talked about there's all these. I remember that now. I remember that lecture. It wasn't cup and ring marks, but what it was at Karnak, you had these concentric circles, and then you had concentric circles within concentric circles, and you had more concentric circles, and yet that did look like ripples, right? And to another generation, that might look like something completely different. And if we if we look at this,
Oh, look at that. Oh.
Yeah. Obviously, it
that-
meant something very serious to the people who did it.
but look at the difference there. There are no lines going into the middle.
No.
The lines that are going into the middle sort of almost seem like they're done later on. There seems to be something there, or am I just looking into it? That's a crack in the rock. But we do, this is an interesting thing. That's a natural crack in the rock there as well. What we do, we get these are cup and ring marks, but they don't have the line going into the middle, right? And what I'm going to do now, I'm glad you said look at that. I've just got to make sure.
I've come back to the ripple effect.
Oh, yes, and those ones at the bottom look like a ripple effect. But what there is, if you look at that rock, there's other. That's an interesting one. Look at that there. It's almost as if it's rectangular with these little squares. You know, with these little. This is in a place that we don't look at all. We looked at this country a few months ago. This is Switzerland. This was actually found in the 1960s by a German archaeologist. And you know, this was up there again. And the thing is, the only difference between, if you dump this stone at Kilmartin, right, nobody notice any difference. Because at Kilmartin you do actually have cups and you have got rings on. They don't always, as we've demonstrated, they don't always have this line going towards the middle. And these again, and you're looking at these and thinking, these actually date from approximately 6,000 years ago, but there's very little erosion on the rock, or maybe there's a lot of erosion on the rock, and these were a lot more pronounced. If you actually look there, that's actually a natural fissure in the rock there. And what they've done, they've actually created these ripples within that natural fissure. So in other words, it's a bit like many things that we see in prehistory. They're using all the rock. And actually, guys, that takes us back to another concept. Remember a few weeks ago we did what we could hear, and I'm very happy that this was worked out extremely well tonight, and you can hear me. We actually did avenues, right? And we actually did the Dorset Cursus Monument, right? Which is like this endless thing that goes on for over 4 miles that has neither a beginning nor an end. It's just like this big sausage thing that goes across the landscape. You go to this terminal and you can just go all the way around again. You can go back along, right? But the interesting thing is with that, there is a parallel with the stone, because at the same time, the people carving into this rock made best use of the terrain of the map. Not map, terrain of the rock. But if you're thinking this as being some kind of a map, you might not be too far out.
You need to think of the composition of the rock. It must be an extremely hard rock to that be still visible on this day after so many years.
Actually, that is another concept. The two things is this being carved in the rock into a very hard rock, and it is a very hard rock because it's still with us today.
Yeah.
So that concept again. So what we're doing, we're using the canvas of the rock to create, let's not call it art, to create the symbols, right? We're also using the canvas of the rock when we look at the art at Craswell Crags, dating back 12, 13, 14,000 years ago, right? We're using the what's called relief within Craswell Crags to offer us a dynamic piece of art within Craswell Crags, but it's actually using the rock. It's not actually abusing the rock. It's actually using the structure of the rock to offer us some kind of context.
Didn't we see something like this on one of the stone circles we were at on Orkney?
We actually what we did see, we saw this on a stone at Brincathly, which was in Anglesey. Did you go on the Anglesey trip, Pete?
Yes, I did. Yes,
it was in there.
Yeah, well, that they were within the cave, weren't they?
They were within the burial chamber. Yeah,
yes, they were, and they were taking rubbings of them, if I remember right.
Right. You're thinking of Barclay the Gareth, but the one that we actually saw that was very like this was in that one that we went into Brincathly on Anglesey. There was one in there on there as well. So yeah, you are right. hang on a minute. I just gotta get my cup of tea. A wonderful cup of tea. Diolch yn fawr i chi.
Oes,
Dwi'n siarad Cymraeg. Da iawn, diolch yn fawr i chi.
Da iawn, yeah.
Shut up. So anyway, this is the thing. So can I just recap on that very important point? Craswell Crags, 12,000, 13,000 years ago, cave art, right? Uses the contours of the landscape within the cave, right? Also, we got the other point. This uses the contours and the landscape of the stone to create this. It's not knocking many bits off, right? It's actually created within this rock in Switzerland, right? We also look at the Dorsa Cursus monument. We also look at the avenue as well. It's meant to be like a straight line, but it's not. You know, at Avebury and West Kennet. But there is one other equally fascinating thing. If you look at this rock, you've almost got you hang on a minute. You've got the contours on the right. That's been there for 6,000 years. Right. Also, you look at some of the natural conditions on the rock. These little lines here. Now, that, if anything, might indicate something else. It's almost as if these lines link. This natural line in the rock here links all these things together. Is it meant to be like that, or is something else going on? Do you know what I want us to do? I want us to push our minds further and think of something else going on, right? We're going to be finished at 7, right? We'll ask some questions at 7 o'clock. But what I want us to do now, our brains are really bobbling tonight, aren't they? Which is absolutely fabulous. I'm loving it. And if we go now, this itself is actually near that site in North Wales called Brynghellyddu, right? That's the one on. They're both on Anglesey. What you can actually see in a very hard rock there, they pecked out these little holes, right? You can see that arrangement over there, right? If you go with that arrangement there, that's very similar to that arrangement there, right? So we could interpret that these little dots here might have the same meaning. I don't know what we're talking about. Switzerland. I gotta say Switzerland. 2,000. Switzerland, is that 2,000 miles away? Is that about right? Anyway, I think that's about right. Actually,
yeah, about right.
Yeah, 2,000 miles away. So this is the thing. Wouldn't it be great? Right? Wouldn't it be great to think that that there is the same mind, right? That there is this. Oh, look at that! Oh, wow! Spiral. That there is the same mind that may have created something like that. When I say the same mind, it's the same brain evolution, right? And I've mentioned this before, folks. Now, one of you is going to disagree with me, but I'm going to say it. Nuclear bombs were being developed from the late 19th. Start again. The idea of the atom bomb, the idea of uranium, the idea of plutonium and all the rest of it, they were mucking with that idea at the end of the 1930s. We would have come to an atomic bomb sooner or later. The Russians were working on it. The Americans, Manhattan Project, were working on it. The British scientists were working on it. The Germans were working on it. Right. Did any of them have any knowledge what they were doing? Why were they doing it at the same time? Right. That's the thing. You could argue, of course, they knew what they would know. Would the Russians have actually shared their knowledge? Could you actually get that knowledge in and out of Russia at that time? And the thing is, there was a reason why they were wanting to develop this bomb, right? And somebody I actually read somewhere that the Japanese were actually close to it as well, but that's something completely different. Why were they doing this at the same time? Right, and I know we've gone off the screen, but why were they actually doing it at the same time? This is the thing. What is in the human mindset that is similar from one society to the next? Is it some kind of? Are there events triggering off mankind to react in a certain way? Now, this has to be something that we need to look realistically at. You know, is the human mind being triggered off by events which are outside our control, right? And do you know what we're going to do next week? We're going to actually look at comets. Okay, we'll look at, because that's a good one. This is one thing that I wanted to just about to mention. When you think about Halley's Comet, right? You think about its first seen and recorded in the Bayer Tapestry. It's not actually; it's recorded before that, but we're just using the. It is, yeah, God, it is. 700 years AD or something like that. Anyway, we've got Halley's Comet mentioned in the Bayer Tapestry, right? How did they see? That's the thing, right? Everywhere on the planet, right? People are seeing Halley's Comet, aren't they? They're seeing Halley's Comet, right? All of the people would all of the people have reacted the same time, right? Do we look at it? Do we hide, right? There were certain people on the planet who reacted the same time reacted the same way to Halley's Comet as we reacted to Halley's Comet. That what I'm trying to get at is quite clear. I'm not making a pig's ear of this, but what I'm trying to get at is that you might have the same events going on to allow people to react in the same way in the same art or whatever they're creating in different parts of the world, which would make perfect sense. Yeah, and I'm sure, for example, yeah, this is a good one. If the land is being flooded and you're gonna drown, what is the first thing that you're gonna do? You're gonna make a boat. You're gonna make a boat, and well, somebody in Africa makes a boat to get away from the flood. We make a boat to get away from the flood. But guess what, folks? There's no link between us. We've just done the same thing at the same time. So what I want us to do at the end now, I just want to show you a site that I have not come across today or before. It's a site known as Garn Tunney. Garn Tunney itself is actually in West Wales, right? And Garn Tunney itself is a site which has a massive stone. What it basically is, it's a big sort of rocky outcrop that happened to be the place of some cup and ring mark stuff, right? Which we see one image of it. So I just wanted to show us a specific locality and this big stone. And what it is, there is this big stone, which is there on the left, and there happens to be that little black thing actually shows you where there's a cut mark, right? And these stones here represent the other part of the monument. But important to us is the period that they actually put these big stones and making these stones into something is going to be this sort of time of huge megalithic building, right? In the Neolithic period, right? But you've heard me say this before. Not all of these boulders have been moved. That's just a bit of an outcrop that's been undermined, right? And it looks like it's been moved. And hey, hence, wow, it's a burial chamber. Love it. Love it. And that's the interpretation, right? But if we then look at, there's two things about this. Let's just do the one thing, right? That's the cup and ring mark, and that's in West Wales. That is similar to the other ones that we've seen, but somebody will say that there is only one ring around that cup. What does that mean? Now, are we going to go nuts and think, oh, there's only one ring around it because there's only one ditch around the settlement, or there's only one ring around it was because there was only one ripple mark, or there's only one ring around it, or was it just the fact that they actually just created this cup and ring mark there in the first place, and that's all it was? Now that is as good as having a meaning and interpretation for something, right? It's called going with the Joneses. We all know about going with the Joneses, don't we? We've got to do what the Joneses do down the road, but we don't know why the hell we do it. I don't want a bloody shower, right? I absolutely hate showers, to be honest with you. I want to jump in a bath. I love baths, right? But we'll put a shower in, right, because the Joneses have got one and we never use it. I've come across people like that, right? Just because somebody's got a meaning and interpretation for something, it doesn't mean to say that it's the be all and end all, right? So what I want us to do here is that there is a natural phenomenon on the rock. now that's it's not exactly a it's not an ammonite. It's basically a spirally thing with no center, right? And it's got this weird shell on it, and it's got these tentacles. And whenever this dates to, because I don't know the age of the rock, but I'm going to presume it's something like a Carboniferous rock, so would make it over 300 million years old. But the interesting thing as well is that one minute we've got a man-made, we've got a man-made sort of indication of a spiral, and then the next minute, folks, we've got something completely natural. And is there any coincidence between the two? Is there any link between the two? Is there any meaning between the two? What are these things meaning? What do they tell us? How do we interpret them? And this is a thing, right? What we've been doing, I'm going to be very unfair now, and I'm going to click on Bill, right? And what I'm going to say, we know that the cup and ring marks were created, right? But this was already in the rock. So what could this possibly mean to our ancestors if it's already there? Bill.
Well, it's natural, not man-made, as you said.
But Pete, but Bill, did they know it was natural?
No, no, that's a good question. Maybe they didn't know, and maybe they use that as a prototype for their various geometric designs.
And that, in other words, that is a nice answer, to be honest with you. It's quite consistent. It's quite balanced. It's not over the top, right? And sometimes this is how we should see our ancestors, like we see it today. For example, I did a film once. It was an Ealing film. It's the only Ealing film I've ever done, but I'm really proud of that film. It was called Architecton, and it was a film about architecture, and the main protagonist in it was like using things from around him to interpret his way of creating art, right? And it was like a revolution in this film that we did, and that's what the premise of the film was. So, and also that might actually represent change and a way forward. Seeing a new way of doing things, whether they knew how it was created or not, is up for no, it's not up for debate. They wouldn't have known how that was created. Or then again, am I completely being biased there? The last image today is, we know what we're doing next week. We're going to look at that. Now that is something else. That is something completely different. And what we are
would have been an end.
Oh, in other words, we have gone all the way around, but there is one thing about that. Well, I want to do this next week, because this is a bit not fair to just rush this one now. So we'll do this next week. But you can see the line there, can't you? That is actually, part of that is actually a crack in the rock. So was that part of the original design? And actually, when water was in there, right, the water would expand, so it would have the cracking. And or was that part of the design? Did somebody see a crack in the rock and they thought, oh bloody hell, we'll follow that, you know? So we'll come back to this one.
Ley line.
Oh, shut up. Or something to do with dowsing. Anyway, the point is, what we do have is if we oh, look at that there. We do have another one there, which is actually, that is one of the simple ones, right? But this itself, if we go back and we go like this, oh god, it's not going to turn now. That is a completely different design, and that's sort of more recent than something from the past. So that's what we're going to do next week. So what we're going to do now, we're going to call that a day now, because we'll have done a whole hour. And also, amazingly enough, this is the first lecture that we've done in ages, which we haven't had a problem, except Pete hasn't shut up. Roger's been doing my head in, and I can't stand anything that Richard's been saying. That leaves out Bill. I can't upset Bill, because Bill's Bill. Right, okay. Pete, anything you'd like to say?
Well, I don't think we give the people of that time enough. They obviously had an understanding of physics, And when they see something like that, they want to know how and why. And man will always want to know how and why these things happen. And by looking at that, they gradually learn a bit about physics. They haven't got it all written down like we have in books, but they find it out by personal experience.
That is good, Pete. But I will agree with that. But I'll also agree. But I do think we've given them a lot of respect today as well.
Yeah, we have here, but I don't think nationally we give these various people across the world sufficient recognition of their intelligence.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I do. Bill.
Yeah, obviously, these cup marks and ring marks on the big stones, they're there to convey a message. Were they actually status symbols of different tribal groups, possibly?
No, that's something we didn't even mention. And
same as the stones of Broadcast, for instance, that sort of thing. But the interesting thing and question you've got to ask, they obviously had a good sense of geometric design in these concentric circles and straight lines, but you never ever see a square or a rectangle or a triangle. Now, why is that? They didn't, that didn't do anything for them. It was something they shied away for some reason. It's a question that no one can answer, I don't think. But it's a fascinating subject. It really is. You know, it just blows your mind.
Sorry, back to that point, Bill. A straight line can be a curve, and that's the point. That's how we see it. For example, you can go, you can walk in, you think you're walking in a straight line, and you could actually be going in a complete circle, right? So it's what does a straight line mean and convey? Is a straight line as necessary as we're giving it credit for? Somebody said, it's been said a few times, the idea of the straight line and the square and the cube is more of a modern phenomenon, and you can clearly see that. However, Bill, right, this is really going to cat amongst the pigeons. When we look at the original buildings on the Northumberland coastline at Hawick, right, they weren't circular buildings, they were rectangular buildings.
Yeah, true. Yeah, the other thing is, of course, we don't know what language they spoke because they left no record at all. But the fact that they've got a number of these scattered over the face of the stone meant that they had a good idea of arithmetic as well. They could count.
And they had a good...
I'm not sure, but they could certainly count. And like Pete said, they could do the basics of arithmetic and geometry and everything else, you know, the very basics, you know. So, yeah.
And they had a good idea of what they meant.
Yeah, total respect.
Exactly, total respect. Total. Next week, comments and weird things and the interpretation. That's what we're doing next week. Who's next? Richard.
Yeah, quite sort of strange where they sort of put all these things, the way they're sort of spread and everything. Always makes you think sometimes perhaps they got their ideas from looking at the moon and the craters of the moon.
Oh, there's a song there.
Which would have looked a lot, I think the moon was a bit closer to the earth then, wasn't it?
Oh, God, I'm not doing that one.
About 6,000 years ago.
It was a bit closer to the earth, was it?
It's slowly moving away, isn't it, the moon?
I did not know that. All right, then, that's something I've learned today. Flippin' heck. Did you know that? I didn't know that. God.
It is, yes. So in 10,000 years' time, you want to get total eclipse.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And Roger, we love you to bits, and hopefully we're seeing you next week, Roger, even though you do my editing. Anything you want to say, Roger?
No, it's okay, that's fine. It's open to interpretation, but the thing on the pond was interesting, but why they all repeated it, maybe because Richard said, looking at the sky and all things, certain things appeared, a common view. Exactly what, I don't know, but that's the only thing. What's common? It's the sky. What's happening on the earth? Who knows? So vague.
Oh, cool. Roger, that was very prophetic.
Yes, that's about it.
Basically, Roger, right? Jessica will be starting her Cardiff class soon.
Yeah,
And weirdly enough, my West Wales class, if my West Wales class is anything to go by, I've already got 13 regulars every week, which is quite shocking. So I think if that's anything to go by, Jessica's new class in Cardiff will explode as well. So we'll just see how that goes. Anyway, more news on that in the next coming weeks.
Okay, cheers, Carl. Yeah.
So if there's no other questions from Rog, Pete,
No.
stay behind. If there's no other questions from Roger, Peter, Bill, Roger, Peter, Bill, and Richard, right? I will see you next week, folks.
Okay, thanks,
Newsletter, Carl.
Cheers,
You're
Carl.
right,
See you
Bill.
next week,
Bye,
everybody.
Hold on.
You
Ta-ra.
guys,
Ta-ra.
take care, Bill, Roger.
Ta-ra then.
Take care. You
Cheers,
soon, Bill.
everyone.
Right, Pete's still there, is he? We'll let all the other numpties on, right? Pete's gone. I told him to stay on. Bloody idiot. He's a very naughty boy. Yeah, he's a very naughty boy. Okay. Jess, are you there? Jess, are you there? My Jess, my Jess, my Jess. Jess, are you there? Right, anyway, I'll stop the recording on this one. Anyway, thank you for liking and subscribing. We didn't talk about invading Poland tonight, which was good. And that was it. So anyway, I'll stop that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And Richard hasn't put his teeth in today. You can see he's got false teeth.